When you look back at recruiting, where you sat, who you talked to, what do you think? Do you think that you were dealt with fairly? Do you think that was a good experience? And I hope that many of you will say, yeah, I had a really good experience. However, looking into science, quite often we see that the experience is optimizable, to say the least. Let's just put it in that words. As soon as people go into recruiting, you often meet what is called biases. It is an unconscious bias, so it's not a conscious action here, but people say, oh, I have a certain opinion about something, and I think you need to meet that criteria, and if you don't, I don't let you proceed on the subject matter, or I don't let you proceed in the recruiting process. And unfortunately, these biases lead to the fact you only have to look into glassdoor.com, where you see that many people complain about completely arbitrary and random stages in recruiting. And even I had that in my life. I'm going to give you a couple of examples in a minute. That's exactly what we're going to talk about today. We're going to talk about unconscious biases in recruiting and leadership. So when you say you want to have talents, of course, you need a great recruiting process. However, in reality, it is often not as great as it should be. And often it starts with, as soon as you want people to apply, you say something like, okay, could you please send me a cover letter? I want to have a cover letter. And they just say that. No focus, no special steps, nothing to be mentioned, no special mentions. When you, for example, say, hey, could you please send me a cover letter and tell me what is the motivation that you, if you are not from a sales background, please point out why do you want to move into sales? Because it's a quite tough job. Why do you want to do that? Perfect. Then these cover letters can be really insightful. If you don't do it that way, what you usually get is that you end up in a situation where someone takes an AI, ChatGPT, Claude, Copilot, Gemini, Perplexity, whatever it is. As soon as you go in there, you have cover letters which are written by AI, and then people say, oh, that is a very nice cover letter. And very nice means it's bland. It is as bland as it gets. When you go to any reasonable AI today, and even in the unpaid version, you say, hey, I'm going to apply for this job in this company, write the perfect cover letter, they're going to write really good cover letters. And by the way, even when I went to uni, and back in the days, AIs didn't exist, it was called machine learning, but during my days at university, which are really long ago, for $5 online, and we were just starting with the internet. We were just starting with everything there. On the internet, we simply had things like, do you want to have a good cover letter? Pay $5 here and you get it. And they had machine learning behind that, and then you had an amazing cover letter. And then people go into the recruiting process and you meet questions such as, why do you think that you're a good fit? And why do you actually want to work for us, not for someone else? Why do you think you're a good fit for the role? So it is as bland as it gets. It is as bland as it gets. From a bland cover letter to bland question, we go full circle AI. One side is writing everything, the cover letter and the whole CV with AI, and the other side is using AI to scan the AI generated items that were handed to you. That full circle AI, of course, will not get you great ratings on any kind of platform. And glassdoor.com is the first one where you will see when you don't do too well. And of course, people say, but how can I spot when I'm not good at biases? Because you said it's unconscious. Yes, it's unconscious. And the problem is, as soon as people are consciously unconscious, that is the starting point where everything goes bad. Maybe you know these people who say things like, yeah, I'm in the industry for 20 years. Within 3 minutes, I know if it's a fit or not. I just know I have the experience. Or one of my favorites where they say, yeah, there's a certain thing which I need to have on the CV. If they didn't go to one of these 5 universities, they're not for us. We need really good people. Yeah, I mean, we don't pay that well, but we need really good people. So these are good universities and the others are not. It's just my experience. Or another amazing piece where people, for example, say, yeah, there are certain people. Look at where this person comes from. So someone from Glasgow. I mean, look at this. We are the city of London. Glasgow, serious? Nah, it's not a fit for us, is it? No, it's not. Thank you. Thank you very much, but no, thank you. These biases is something which you meet as soon as you see the locker room talk amongst recruiters. And if anyone says, and by the way, I did professional training on unconscious biases to get rid or at least partially under control. You will never have full control. You can only have awareness and partial control that unconscious biases exist, and then make smarter decisions as soon as you're aware of that. As soon as you open a CV, there are a couple of things where some people might now say, this still exists? Yes, it does. I give you an example. When you see a name, when you see a photo, when you see an address, you immediately judge people. And when you now say photos, is that still a thing? Hello to my American and British listeners here. You will probably now be shocked that in many countries, photos are still very common. In Germany, people have pictures all over the place. And I know that in the UK and the US, you often have systems which prevent that from happening. And as soon as anyone applies as a picture, and then you immediately say no for compliance reasons. You say you need to apply, but without a picture. And in many countries, that's not the case. And when you now say name, come on, name is not really relevant. There's a massive study about that, the Mr. Smith effect. We just had one German applicant who had a straight A at a really good university and applied 60 times. 12 interviews out of 60 times he applied. And his colleague, who got the exact same degree, was a straight A on all counts, wrote 12 applications and got 10 interviews. 10 out of 12 for someone with a German name, and 12 out of 60 for someone with an Arab name. And there we are again. Because then you have people sitting there, and by the way, this person posted on LinkedIn, this is racism and this is Germany, by the way, completely correct on both counts here. This person simply said, look, when someone sits there as a recruiter and tells me, yeah, it's a really good CV, but to be fair, we can't even pronounce your name correctly. You're just not a fit for us. We don't have people with such names here. And this happened. This happened. This is not 2 months ago. And in the year 2025, this is what we have. Because people simply say, yeah, it's a name we don't have here so far. So what about not having this now and not starting with it? It's just not a fit. And that's just racism. Racism and unconscious bias performing the worst out of the worst. And by the way, of course, got a massive negative review on Glassdoor. Then they asked him to remove it, which he didn't. Then it escalated on LinkedIn. So the full Streisand effect. So anyone got attention of that. 60,000 people read it, and then 100,000 read it. At the end, 1.5 million people read that. Congratulations. Massive brand damage due to bad recruiting. And what did you do? You doubled down on the bad recruiting. The name, the photo, the address. You can't imagine when you ever lived in London. When I moved to London, I wanted to live somewhere very central. So I lived in a smaller space. I have a minimalist lifestyle, as many people know me. Who know me? Anyone who knows me knows me. I have a minimalist lifestyle. I love to live in small spaces and own the minimum amount of things I can have. That's just a personal thing. I'm not spiritual. I don't force anyone to do so. It's just my personal life choice. And as soon as people said, yeah, Niels, welcome to London. So you moved here. Where do you live? And then I said, Kensington. And let's face it, Kensington is a good part of London. It's probably on paper one of the best parts, but I lived there in a shoebox. So I didn't live there in a villa or a mansion. I lived there in a shoebox. So they are really like Kensington, like in Kensington or near Kensington. Because what they were alluding to is that they say, is it the good or the bad part of Kensington? But just people don't like to say that because it always sounds a bit judgmental, mainly because it is. So as soon as people say, where in Kensington did you live? I only had to say W8. W8 was the good postcode of Kensington. The bad one is SW5. That's like Gloucester Road and the whole weird part where all the skyscrapers stand with the social housing and whatnot. Yeah, so W8 is the good part. That's High Street Kensington, Notting Hill Gate and stuff. Yeah, that's the good part, isn't it? So name, photo, address. When I, by the way, moved from Kensington to Canary Wharf, E14, the same thing happened. Postcode lottery. As soon as you have the postcode, certain postcodes simply have a good reputation. And by the way, certain addresses in your city will have the same. When recruiters are knowledgeable on local conditions in the city where they live, they judge people based on the address and suddenly say things like, yeah, this person comes from, actually had to look up where the city is. It's somewhere in rural Wales. No idea where that is. Not sure if they can handle London. Maybe they just move back in a month and say this was not for me. I just think we take someone from London, shouldn't we? It's just more common territory here. And that's exactly the problem. The problem is that people judge other people based on random factors. Neither name, nor photo, nor address have anything to do with the job you have to do. When you, for example, say, hey, we are a remote first company, but when you have to be in the office, we expect you to be there rather quickly. So probably on Monday, we can say be there on Tuesday. And when then someone lives 400 miles away, that's a reasonable thing to say. I don't think that you can, by short notice, come to the office. That is at least a reason where you can factually justify why you decide in favor of someone and against someone else. But it gets worse from here after name, photo, address, because you think there are additional lines on your PowerPoint slide here, Niels. What else is there? And the next one is education and experience. often people say education is important, and I fully agree. Of course, you need educated people. However, sometimes people have very weird tick the box aspects of education. That happened to me. A company was looking for coaches. And of course, one thing which I highly appreciate is when someone says, are you a qualified coach? Because anyone can call themselves a coach. You need to know the methodology, you need to know it properly. And I hold an MBA, a Master's of Business Administration from the University of York St. John in York, United Kingdom. So 2 years, full education, academic education, and hundreds of hours, hundreds of references I have. You can see them all on LinkedIn and anywhere else. So I gave it all to them, and then the recruiter said it was a selection person for self-employed people. So they asked me, "Yeah, so do you have a certificate?" And I was slightly stunned about that question. Said, "Well, I handed everything to you. I have a master's degree on the matter, 2 years education certificate, can be anything from a weekend course to an afternoon class to an online class with no exam with a certificate because you paid for the class. So no, I don't have a certificate. I have a 2-year master's degree." And the recruiter said, "Yeah, so do you have a certificate? Because I need a certificate for our system." And I told him, "Well, I can send you the certificate from the university, which certifies I did the degree with a QR code on it, so you can see it's an MBA, which I did with my name. So it's the proof of the degree if you want that." And then the recruiter said, "Yeah, but that's a degree. No, I need a certificate. Do you have a certificate?" And then I went into straightforward mode and said, "You don't really want to put a certificate with no academic credentials over an academic degree." And the recruiter said, "Yeah, I have a system here. Do you have a certificate?" And that was the point where we simply went our way. And that company never has to talk to me ever again. When that's the way how you select your coaches, good luck. You will get the weekend class coaches who took a 90-minute online session and now call themselves a coach. So education is something which you need to focus on. What do you actually need? And sometimes you say it's vocational training, perfectly fine. Sometimes you say it's university, perfectly fine, but define it well, because otherwise always people tend to hover towards their own alumni network, to where they have been. The same with experience. When they say, "Oh, look, you came from that company. I was there. Good people come from there because I was there and I am successful, as you see, because I sit in front of you, so I'm successful." And so when you come from there, you're a good person because I am a good person because I like myself and I like people who like me and people who are like me. And that's what is called isomorphism. Iso, Greek for equal, morph for appearance. Isomorphism, you only hire people who are close to what you are. And that is, of course, a massive unconscious bias. And these unconscious biases exist in every single place. And it goes way further than that. From different accents. By the way, when I did my last professional training on the matter, and I did my 8th professional training with Catalyst, one of the largest vendors worldwide on unconscious bias training, and I also realized certain accents are connected with a certain judgment. And then I received professional training on that to get awareness on that and make better decisions afterwards. From accent bias, language bias, age, gender. When you say age, oh, anyone over 50, they are just sick too often, right? They are just no, they're often calling it sick. Gender, oh yeah, a female can get pregnant, right? So now we need people in the office, not in the hospital. No, so, oh, family, they have children, are not flexible enough. Sorry, hobbies. And that's one of the worst things when they say, oh, hobbies. Yeah. One of Germany's formerly largest entrepreneurs in construction, who is now mainly in the focus of the public prosecutor, surprise, surprise, that comes together when success and big ego hits TV, usually knows something bad is going on. And that was the same here. He says, and I quote word by word, "People who do martial arts are good leaders because they can force through hard times." Another expert, self-proclaimed expert, said anyone in professional sports is excellent at sales because they know how to deal with drawbacks and backslash. That's pseudoscience at its best. Do you know how many professional sports people failed with their businesses? That's probably and they all came from professional sports, so they know how to deal with drawbacks, but still they went bankrupt. So it didn't happen because they were so great at sales, was it? So this whole thing with hobbies and trying to find something in their hobbies which suits or does not suit your narrative is the definition of bias. And anything with formality, when you say, "Oh yeah, the layout of your CV really weird, didn't like the colors, and Some paragraphs were underlined properly, so I don't think that we can hire you. If you want to hire someone for copywriting who needs to design books, then that's a reasonable choice. But when you hire someone who's an accountant, they probably don't have to write many things in a literary way and publish books afterwards. So when the colors are a bit weird and the whole setup looks a bit old-fashioned, maybe there's just accountancy or just the person, but it's not an issue in the recruiting process. And especially when it comes to language, there is a massive bias. And by the way, I can feel you when you will say, but I have an issue with that, because I do as well. I give you a very simple example. Someone applies in my business. My business is called NB Networks. I receive an application, and on the top of the first page, it said MB Networks. M, not N. M, not N. MB Networks, one typo at the very top, writing the company name in the wrong way. Not great. Fortunately, 2 years before that, I saw a professional talk from Professor Cunning, one of the leading scientists of the Hochschule Osnabrück in Germany, who did research on what kind of scientific proof do we have between typos in cover letters and the way how people work. Because you often say when you have a cover letter where people have 2 or 3 typos in there, you often say, yeah, the applicant is not really the person that is able to work precise. It's not precisely. It's not working precise is not your strength because you have typos in your cover letter. Of course, when someone has 40 typos, you probably see there's a certain weakness and someone is unable to press F7 and does a spell check in Microsoft Word, or you simply use an AI to get the whole thing through. However, as soon as you say with the tiniest typo, we put you through to not you, there is no scientific evidence backing that. Zero, zilch, nada, in the end. And I can feel how much resistance this causes, because I am not happy when someone puts the company name the wrong way. You want to apply here, you want to work here. However, I want to hire the best people, not the best writers. And that is where I simply have to overcome my personal belief system. And that's something which you learn in unconscious bias training. And as I told you, I already had 8 in my life, and every single time I left this training better than I was before. About 7, 8 years ago, I started doing delivering unconscious bias training by myself, delivering it from others. So it's a very important step that you should undertake, because you now probably wonder, how can we implement this in our organization? Because our leaders have strong opinions, and I'm not really sure they want this. And the very first thing is you need to create an awareness, and the awareness must be that you say you're hiring the wrong people. You're hiring people where you feel they are good picks, and then suddenly in real life you find out they are not, and then they're in the organization, then it's way too late. Once they're in, you don't get them out anymore. Very, very hard. In the US, way easier, but probably in almost any other place on earth, and even in coastal states, California, New York City, you can't just lay off people by telling them goodbye, at least not with massive backslash or potential consequences. So the awareness needs to be there in the first place, and what you need to have here is professional training and coaching. I received this. I highly recommend anyone to get that. You can contact me about it or find it anywhere else if you like, but feel free to contact me about it. If you were not trained professionally, you probably have biases which you do not know about. And then most likely you will have something on your mind where you judge people in the wrong way and then simply select the wrong people. Because what people need to do in recruiting, and that's where recruiters are not too keen on, you need to do result screening. And result screening simply means that you check which are the recruiters who bring in people who actually work, and who are the recruiters who constantly bring in people where we say, yeah, average, or below the average, or didn't pass probation time, or was fired after 3 months. And then you can see who are the ones who don't deliver too well. And one thing is crucially important here, because I can tell you one aspect, especially in today's times, will happen to you. Someone will say, yeah, this whole unconscious bias thing and diversity training and whatnot, it's just too woke. It's all woke today. I'm 30 years in the industry. I know what I'm doing. Yeah, don't tell me what to do. I know what I'm long. How long are you in the industry? 5 years? Are ridiculous. I'm 25, 30 years in the industry. I know after 3 minutes who is a good hire or not. And then they say woke, wokety woke. And one thing is very important. Nothing smart has ever been said. That's a perfect bonus. I usually don't give a bonus round in my podcast because we have enough things to go through. But I always give a bonus round for people who scream woke. Nothing smart has ever been said in the history of humankind when the word woke was used as a pejorative. Nothing ever, absolutely no exception. When people say something is woke, it simply means they don't like it, they don't want to change, and that means they cannot be anywhere near people recruiting, or leadership, because by their own statements, they are unsuitable on the matter. Of course, anyone has the right to change. Anyone has the right to make up their mind. I can fully understand, by the way, when people say, look, I really can't go through the 78 cheap $49 online class, which simply tells me, be a good person and you have to be neutral and get something written down. Of course, when you buy cheap, nonsensical classes, people will have an aversion to go there. However, when you get professional people in, professional trainers, speakers, coaches, call it as you like, ask me, ask anyone else you like. However, when you get them in, you will have a great experience, and people will actually leave and say that actually brought me somewhere where I haven't been before, and actually where I actually thought I don't even have to be. And very important here is diversity training and unconscious bias training is not about telling people how wrong they are. That is really unprofessional, and then putting stigma in there, oh, it's all your fault, and you just know that's not the point here. You simply tell people that there are things of the human psyche, things of how we get to conclusion, which are simply not neutral, and we all want to have great results. No one sits in their organization's head, I like to have really bad colleagues who are not up to the job, and I have to catch up with their work. No one wants that. Anyone wants great colleagues who are up to the job, who fit perfectly well, who integrate to the team, who are a great fit to culture, to the organization, to the team, and who are experts on the matter. And to find them and not select people by name, age, gender, or whatnot, and things you don't even know about. That is, and especially when people scream something like, I always give the job to the most suitable person. I don't need training. Just pick the most suitable person. When anyone says that, these are people who have no professional qualifications on the matter, and that means they are unsuitable for recruiting people and any leadership matter. So very important here is when you do things the scientific way, professionally qualified and fully aware of unconscious biases, you will be a better person, a better leader, and especially a better recruiter, including, of course, recruiting leadership. And I wish you all the best implementing this in your organization. And when you now say, that sounds like a bit of work. Can we have a chat on that? Yes, of course we can. So first, of course, when you listen to me or watch me on YouTube right now, leave a like here, subscribe to my channel. Thank you very much for doing so. Or leave a comment here. I'm looking forward to hearing from you. If you also like to do that, if you, by the way, listen to me on Apple Podcasts or Spotify, feel free to leave a review here. And of course, feel free to recommend this podcast and the videocast amongst your friends, colleagues, anywhere on social media, online, offline, anywhere. Thank you very much for doing so as well. One thing we have, which is only available on YouTube, are the leadership tips called the YouTube Shorts. As the name says, only available on YouTube. So when you subscribe to my channel, feel free to leave the little bell there, because when you leave the little bell there, you always get the information as soon as a new video is online, so you don't miss out on anything. And of course, you can follow me on Apple Podcasts or Spotify, or go to my website, nb-networks.biz, and then we take it from there, and you see what I do for a living. And in addition to that, when you now say, need to discuss something, but I can't do it in the comment section because it's about my company, it's confidential. And this episode happened due to emails I received after the Zukunft Personal, one of the largest expos in the decision-making space in people development, which we just had 2 weeks ago. Emails coming from speeches I delivered there. I delivered 10 speeches in 3 days. Rather busy days, I can say, with 41 appointments in 3 days. So there, people said, I have an interest in this. Could you do an episode on that? And yes, I can. Send me an email. Tell me this topic is relevant. I have this situation. Keep it anonymous. And of course, I will keep it anonymous. Don't mention names or anything. And then I move on from there. And then I can do an episode on that. And then you can get clarity on the matter. When you now say, do we have live sessions where I can talk to you live? Yes, we do so. We have live sessions. When you go to expert.nb-networks.com, put your email address on there. And no worries, when you sign up for the so-called leadership letter, that's how we call the letter, you only receive one email every Wednesday morning. It's 100% content, ad-free guarantee. Very important here, as soon as you receive this email on Wednesday morning, you get full access to all the podcasts, videocasts, and articles, more than 400 in the English and German language. No paywall, no nothing, full access on it. And you also get the date, the time, and the access link. No registration needed, the access link to our live sessions. We only communicate the live sessions via the leadership letter. There is no other resource. So when you want to join for the live session, which we have monthly, we just had one. The next one is coming up reasonably soon. Sign up there, and then you will be kept informed. Of course, you can also follow me on social media. Feel free to follow me and connect with me on LinkedIn. Don't do the follow thing. Just connect properly so we have everything aligned here. Follow me on LinkedIn. Connect with me on LinkedIn. Follow me on Instagram. connect with me on Facebook, of course on YouTube, and of course when you are in the German-speaking space, I'm on Xing. That's the German-speaking version of LinkedIn, focusing on recruiting. So we can take it from there. I'm looking forward to being connected with you. At the end of this podcast and at the end of this video cast, there's only one thing, very important thing to say. When you now say, hey, I need to discuss something, just get in touch with me. I answer every single message within 24 hours or less. I'm looking forward to hearing from you. So at the end of this podcast and at the end of this video cast, there's only one thing left for me to say. Thank you very much for your time.